Boa tarde, galera. Tudo bem aí? This is Mickey D from the Mickey D2 Rumble channel at Mickey D2 on Gab for the Profile Far Q. Guys, it's Monday morning and I'm back on the streets of Joinville again to bring another update of what's going on here in Brazil at the moment. And as you'll recall from my video on Saturday, I had a very important update bringing you the news that it seems as though the military intervention here in Brazil has begun, and it looks like it began with the military and the military police entering many favelas in Rio City, Rio State and São Paulo, among other areas, although I don't exactly know the exact cities, but I've heard there have been many cities in Brazil where they've entered the favelas, and it seems like this was a very important first step in the military intervention because it effectively disables the PT party's proxy army or their terrorist arm, which is the gangs, the organised crime in the favelas, which is why they haven't removed it in the last decades, because the left didn't want it removed. And I've found out that even during Lula's presidency, he prohibited the police and the military from entering the favelas in Brazil. And why would he do that if it wasn't only to protect them? So it's looking like Bolsonaro went to the favelas and the communities first to remove the armies of the left, and now it seems like the path towards retaking the country will be a lot more peaceful, non-violent. So big things happening, guys. The country is absolutely buzzing today, as it was yesterday as well, all over the weekend, and it's starting to look more and more like that we have in fact witnessed the beginning of military intervention. And after listening to there's heaps of audios, heaps of videos, a lot of footage getting around at the moment, and one audio suggested that we're witnessing the beginning of a similar military coup that happened in '64. Now, one thing that I've been hearing in the last few days, which I didn't know about, and I'm sure most people who are not from Brazil don't know about as well, we're all taught to believe that the dictatorship here in Brazil was a dictatorship, was an illegal and a criminal dictatorship, and maybe it finished that way. But what I'm starting to understand now is that in '64, the military intervention that happened for exactly the same reason as it's about to happen here as well, and that was because there was a communist attempted takeover in the '60s, and we know that with Fidel Castro. And if you watched the documentary from Epoch Times, Brazil, A Last Stand in the Americas, you would know that Lula was very close ally to Fidel Castro, and Lula was a main part, was a key piece in bringing the communism, or bringing communism to South America and Central America. So people are telling me, and I had no idea, but they're telling me that the country welcomed it in the beginning, and that it was only because it lasted so long that it inevitably became corrupt as well, and then it was necessary for them to remove it. But initially it was a move made by the right to stop communism from completely taking over this country. So there's something interesting for you to consider. I'll find out more about it, but it makes sense in my mind, especially after watching the documentary. But who knows? But with everything that's happening, I thought I would try to put a couple of pieces together that might help to make this justifiable or understandable, because there's a lot of things happening and it's hard to know exactly what's going on at the moment. But if we look back and we go back right back to when President Trump and Putin first met, and when Trump gave the football to Putin, we all know that there was something inside that football that Putin shook and heard, and the most logical speculation would be that Trump was handing over some kind of intelligence to Putin. And for me, it seems like maybe it was something that was connected with everything that's going on now. And it made me think about what Bolsonaro has been doing, where he has been travelling over the last 3 or 4 years of his first term here. And there are some interesting things to come out of it. So we know actually Bolsonaro went to the United States about 7 times during his presidency, but 3 of those were to meet Trump. So the first time was back in March of 2019, and then in September of 2019, and then in March of 2020, Bolsonaro met with President Trump, and I believe they were already strategizing about how they were going to stop this communist takeover. And what I found interesting was some other visits that Bolsonaro made, or that people made to him, and a couple of them that were interesting were, first of all, Jake Sullivan, and he visited. He's Biden's national security director, or national security or intelligence director, and he visited Bolsonaro in August of last year. And then after that, we had Bolsonaro went to visit Putin in February this year, and remember that it was about a week or 2 weeks maximum before Putin entered Ukraine. So it was a very, very interestingly timed trip by Bolsonaro to visit Putin in Russia, and I believe that it was to put the final ducks in place so they could get the strategy in order, ready for the operation, which began in Ukraine. So I think that it's looking like phase 1 of this entire war against the communist takeover was that of Putin's special military operation in Ukraine, because we do know that Ukraine seems to be the head of the snake, where a lot of the corruption, a lot of the money laundering, a lot of the human trafficking, and a lot of the biological weapons development happens all there in Ukraine. So thinking of it logically, it was probably the first place that had to be cleaned up before anything else could be done, and Putin is currently taking care of that. And that made me think, is it possible that Brazil is phase 2 of this communist cleanup? Because Brazil, we know, is the most important or the biggest and most major country in South America, and we know if Brazil falls, well, then the whole continent falls. So I think it's probably pretty realistic and plausible to think that maybe this war, this operation here in Brazil was planned not only by Bolsonaro but with the blessings of Putin and Trump, because Brazil is such a key piece in this war against communism, and obviously for a huge faction of the global communism to be removed. It would have to be removed from South America and Central America, because we know that in recent years there's been a huge communist takeover here in South America, including Chile, Peru, Venezuela, Bolivia, Argentina, and more, Colombia too. So it was almost a complete communist takeover in South America, and Bolsonaro obviously was the last hope for the nationalists to avoid this communist takeover. So it's extremely important that Bolsonaro retains his power here in South America, if of course he was re-elected, and we all know he was. So I believe this is why there is going to be military intervention, or that military intervention has already begun here in Brazil, because it's simply too important. This peace, this chess piece, is too important to lose at this stage of the war. So, and just getting back to a couple of more very interesting meetings that Bolsonaro had. So he met with Jake Sullivan, and then he met with Putin, and then in May of this year the CIA director came and I believe had a secret meeting with Bolsonaro. And look, I think they all knew what was coming even back then. These things don't get planned in a week or 2 weeks. I'm sure Bolsonaro knew back months and months ago, or even longer, that the left was planning on stealing the election, and they were planning on conducting a communist coup d'etat. And I believe Bolsonaro's been preparing for that for a long time. And I'm sure the CIA director came over here, when he came over in May of this year, to try and threaten Bolsonaro and to try and tell him to not do what he had planned. And well, as we can see now, it looks like Bolsonaro has not listened to the deep state, and he is in fact carrying out his military operation to remove the communists in this communist coup d'etat. So, and then after the CIA director came in May, we also had Elon Musk here in May, and he met with Bolsonaro in May this year, and they discussed many things, including the Amazon. And what I take out of that meeting is that I believe Musk was possibly over there to find out for himself what was actually going on, as he did with Tim Cook just last week, visiting Tim Cook at Apple. So I think Musk was there to find out what Bolsonaro had to say about this whole Amazon thing, because this the controversy about the Amazon jungle, there's a lot of fake news involved too, folks. Sure, there are people up in the Amazon destroying the forest. There are, but it's not government. They're not government people. They're illegal traders and illegal deforesters and all these kinds of things happen in the Amazon. It's not Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro was actually trying to help, but you know what the media is like. The media are such liars. They made it look like he was the one destroying the Amazon jungle, but he's not. It's been happening for decades and decades, and guess what? The left has been in charge for a lot of that time, so it has nothing to do with Bolsonaro. It's just another fear tactic to make people scared and to make them cower and do what they're told. But I'm sure Musk, when he came over and found out everything he found out, it probably helped him even more to decide what he was going to do. And I read that Bolsonaro commented at the time that Musk's attempted purchase of Twitter at the time was a breath of hope for the people, yeah, because there haven't been many people who have been censored and silenced in the world more than President Bolsonaro. Him and President Trump have probably been the two most censored and most silenced in the whole world. So there you have it. Now, so with all those meetings and stuff, one can assume it's not hard to believe that this operation has been in the works for a considerable period of time, and that we're only just now starting to see the actual plan implemented. So it's looking like Brazil could be phase 2 of this communist cleanup to get rid of the communists around the world who are trying to conduct a military coup, a global military coup. And something that I haven't confirmed this, guys, so if you guys can check it out as well and verify it for me if you can. But I'll share this video in the description box below, that there is video emerging from last night. This is what they're claiming, that was last night in El Salvador, that the military in El Salvador was on the street and was arresting and eliminating gangs and criminal factions in the same way as Bolsonaro did in Brazil on Friday evening and Friday night and Saturday. So does it look like that El Salvador is conducting the same operations? We know that Nayib, what's his name, Bukele, we know he is a nationalist too, he's not a communist, and we know that he's been attacked by the deep state. Bukele actually made Bitcoin legal tender in El Salvador, and that caused a big reaction from the globalists, the WEF and the IMF and all those non-elected global entities all went off the rails when he made Bitcoin legal tender in El Salvador. And he's been constantly attacked by the media, as you'd expect. So what that looks like to me is that he is taking advantage of this situation and also removing these criminal cartels and factions and gangs from the organised crime in El Salvador. Now, this made me also think as well that when this military intervention hits full speed, and when the military is on the street, and because I think they're going to implement martial law. I think there'll be a period of martial law, so they can clean up so they can arrest all the people they need to arrest. You know, the Supreme Court justices, all the corrupt governors and senators and stuff that have been causing the chaos in Brazil. I think once all that starts, I fear that you're going to have a big reaction, a big blowback from the United States, who I believe will inflict severe sanctions on Brazil, and I'm sure that there'll be some sort of alliance formed between all the communist countries and governments here in South America with the United States. So they'll join forces with Chile and Argentina and who knows where else, Venezuela certainly, and maybe this is how the left here in Brazil is going to conduct their counterattack, because the way I see it, if this doesn't happen, I think it's already over, folks. Like, the fact that Bolsonaro has just disabled the terrorists, which are like, I mean the gangs and, you know, the criminal factions within the favelas, the fact that Bolsonaro has already disabled them and eliminated them, it doesn't. There is nowhere now that the left can use to attack the right. People don't have guns here. The military is on Bolsonaro's side. The law enforcement in general is on Bolsonaro's side. So, and now that the criminals have been taken out, who's left? Because the big news from the operation on the weekend was that the head of the Comando Vermelho, or Comando Vermelha, which is the Red Command, which is like it's like the communist army. It sounds like that. But the whole leadership, the first in charge, second in charge, third in charge, they're all killed very quickly in the favela Morro da Coca-Cola in Rio de Janeiro. So that told me straight away that they were eliminating the threat, because we had heard that they were going to cause chaos as soon as Bolsonaro enacted his military operation, that all these gangs were going to cause terrorism around the country in major cities. And Bolsonaro obviously knew about that and stopped it before it happened. So now there's nowhere for the left, or there's nobody to cause chaos here from the left. It seems like they've been completely disabled, and now it should just be a matter of Bolsonaro and his allies arresting the criminals, because there's nobody who's going to cause chaos now, unless the left is forming some kind of plan with the countries, the communist countries of South America, to try some sort of attack on Brazil in that way. But I don't know if that's going to happen. I think that's probably some pretty wishful thinking, but just something I thought I'd mention in case, because if not, for me it's over. They can only have power when they cause fear in the people. But if they now have no army, they have no strong arm, they're not a threat anymore. So that's how it's looking to me, folks. I think Brazil is in much better position now than we probably imagine. I think the future threat to Brazil will now come from the United States if Biden is still in charge. So that's where I think we are at the moment. Seeing now if there's anything else that I've forgotten about. Just when Bolsonaro did go up to Russia at the beginning of the year, when he came back, he made a comment which I never forgot. It was like, we're going to take our country back, or something like that, and he was all happy. For me, now it looks like it was all to do with what's happening right now. So exciting times, folks, but also intense and concerning for the safety of everybody who is going to be in the line of fire here. But it looks like that things are happening here in Brazil, and that we might have intervention, and people are also saying that possibly we could have martial law by the end of this week. Oh, I forgot to say, I'm not going with that one. What I think could happen is that I think Bolsonaro's going to wait until Lula and his scumbag crims certify the election, because remember, they brought it forward from the 19th to the 12th. So that's actually good for Bolsonaro. So it gives him more time. So I think Bolsonaro's going to wait. He's going to get all his military in place, which he's doing. There's just footage everywhere, all around the country. And as soon as they certify it, well, that kind of officializes. It makes the crime official anyway, and then that gives Bolsonaro full 100% justification to carry out his operation. So that's the way I see it. Let's see what happens up until the 12th. I've heard as well that Lula is trying to bring forward the certification even more. So if he brings it even further forward, it's going to be even better, because I'd say Bolsonaro would like to get this operation done, at least get the military on the street, get the people arrested, and bring calm and peace back to the streets quickly and before Christmas. So that's what I'd say is going to happen, is that Bolsonaro wants to have everything done by Christmas so people can be a little more calm and at ease during the Christmas period. I don't know if it would happen during the Christmas period, but I suppose you never know. And just to finish off, guys, we have Brazil playing their first knockout game of the World Cup today against South Korea. Should be a relatively easy victory for Brazil. I'd say it should be somewhere around about 2-0. Sadly, Australia lost on the weekend. They played really well against Argentina. They lost 2-1, but they didn't embarrass themselves like I thought they might. They actually played really well, and it's encouraging for future World Cups because that team seems to be pretty young still. So cheering for Brazil again today, this afternoon, against South Korea, and that game's at 4 p.m. local time. So later on tonight I'll get down to the protest again to show how many people are there. I'd be interested to try and talk to a few people to get their thoughts on what they think is going on and their reactions to what has happened over the last couple of days. But folks, I'll leave this video there, so thanks for joining me. This is Mickey D from the Mickey D2 Rumble channel, at Mickey D2 on Gab for the FAQ profile. And please like the video, share it with all your friends, subscribe to my channel, give me a follow on Gab if you can, and I look forward to seeing you all again on the next video. Thanks for watching, and ciao for now.